We first met in Berlin in 2010 and lived together. Before we started working at Barbara's practice as a photojournalist, mine as an artist more studio based. We didn't collaborate at this point, but we kind of started to help or advise or any of these other sort of forms that led us to understand each other's work in a way. And it was a very natural kind of dynamic in terms of becoming collaborating artists, because it kind of grew incrementally into this situation that we started to collaborate now for the past 8 years, and it's become more clarified in terms of what we do together.
It's the first experience that we both had, each of us had, and working together. And it's not only that we work with each other, but the practice that we ended up developing has all to do with how we expand this form of sharing to the artists we work with in the films we make. So the idea of collaboration is super present. And I think it has a lot to do with a form of trust, a drive for trying things out, no? That you hardly really do on your own, because you need someone to say, no, that's not enough. Why don't we go there? And I think this is something that happened naturally, like Benjamin said, of us being from different cultural backgrounds. If you think that I come from being a journalist to work in the arts, and Benji as an artist that then begins working with documentary, but also the fact that he was then in Brazil in the beginning of our work together, looking at things from a different perspective, no? So asking questions to me, like why this and why that, how? So it's a beautiful way of understanding how work actually comes from a very real presence in the world, and an attempt to really read and understand what's going on around you.
The whole process is kind of you have to start with a lot of curiosity, I think, before you engage in any work with any other peoples, So art and journalism are a good crossing point.
Me and Benji started to respond in Recife, in the northeast of Brazil, to respond to a phenomenon that was very clear then to us. It was the rise of a certain new middle class. It has all to do with the political and economic moment of Brazil, the generation that was then producing music. So it's not that much that we discovered these groups, but they were there, and there was something that was not being actually discussed about. It's like how tradition was then being refashioned by this generation, and then how they were, for the first time, surviving from their labor as artists. So a whole generation of artists from the peripheries that then gain access to technology and make work within the arts as singers, dancers, and music producers. So we started there. Emily Xangu, as a curator, is also someone in Toronto that was doing that as a curator, a community organizer, a thinker, a writer. When she commissions us to come to Toronto and then think on something that could be a contribution of ours in the context of Jane and Finch and Scarborough, the two communities at the north of the city that are very much marked by a new generation of Torontonians that are of African Caribbean descent.
They're kind of economic immigrants from the Caribbean, invited in the 70s, and then, like happens in many other places in the world, become kind of vilified as dangerous, as they get associated with many negative qualities. So this generation that we worked with are Canadian, were born, for the majority, were born in Canada, and negotiate these two spaces of being Afro-Caribbean and being Canadian in terms of their own understanding of who they are, and it changes up associations in terms of body and background as well, in terms of what's being thought, what's personal, what's personal, private, and public. I like to think that people on the screen are representing the country in their own way, and in a sense I'm sort of facilitating in terms of what myself and Barbara together have kind of created over the years. I think the work was kind of addressing those very issues of representation and nationhood, but also turning it on its head, I hope, in very important ways.
We found a different energy. This new piece is probably going to reflect these issues of time and presence as no other work before. The part of the work that was in Ireland we made in March.
At the very beginning of over lockdown, really.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
We had an interval between the shooting of the two parts that we were not planning. This indefinite time to look at the footage of what we shot in Ireland, to then plan what we would shoot in Marseille, and that entered the process in a very strong way to structure the script.
Because we just recently were showing the one-screen version of Swingerha in the Berlinische Galerie here in Berlin. It's peculiar how although it's only 1 year old, it already feels dated. And I was like, yeah, of course, it's pre-COVID, you know. So everything that happens before is somehow in another moment. And the fact that we made this work in 2 different countries over this very uncertain period of time during the pandemic, it's kind of lent, it's imbued with the uncertainty and the strangeness of COVID, even though it doesn't relate. It's not about that, you know. It's present, and yet it's not present. For me, anyway, it'll always be present, and it'll always be on a line between, let's say before and after. We would hope to think. So it's a very strange thing.
We were very lucky because we didn't stop working, and we actually saw ourselves having our work to actually reflect on our own practice. No,
yeah,
that was really very, very beautiful. We lament in many ways what is going on with a lot of the artists we work with in cinema, in performance, in dance. So the situation is very hard, for example, for the poets of Rise in Canada, for the dancers of Swingerha in Brazil. We are in touch with them all. We are following, and I think, yeah, on the side of the pandemic in Brazil, especially the political situation makes everything even more unpredictable. So we have been lucky to be able to just concentrate and work.
It's an honor. I think it's wonderful, and you know, also to receive funding from the Arts Council is an amazing thing, and it's also something never to be taken lightly, and never to be kind of imagined that you have some kind of a right to it, because what you're dealing with is money from people in Ireland. So it's a lot of pressure. You know, I feel like a huge pressure about that. On one hand, to make sure I make something that reflects and people can get nourished from. And on the other hand, still manage to take risks and try new things and experiment. So it's a complicated balance, you know. Mm-hmm. But that is bought by a public institution. I mean, that is bought by the Arts Council. Also allows it to exist in the public realm. It's owned by people, and they're going to get to see it in different ways.
Most of the times, we're really interested in how the work is communicated, how it's perceived, how it is translated, how it is present, how the conversations grow around the topics that are there. And it is super important for us. It's one of the few public institutions that has our work. For us, it's beautiful to understand that it is an Irish institution that then got an interest in a work that we made in Canada. So this is really, it reassures a practice that really goes beyond the idea of representation itself.